By the middle of World War II, the Atlantic Ocean had become an arena of hidden, relentless struggle, where the fate of convoys, nations, and entire armies depended on unseen hunters beneath the waves. German submarines, known as U-boats, were the deadly weapon of the Kriegsmarine, threatening Allied supply lines and turning shipping routes into a battlefield without boundaries. Every ton of cargo lost, every ship sunk, weakened the Allies' ability to fight a global war. Germany produced its submarines in series, each generation improving stealth, endurance, and firepower. Among them, the long-range Type IXC boats were considered elite, capable of crossing entire oceans and striking near the American coast. One of these vessels was U-505, built in Hamburg and launched in May 1941. U-505 entered service with confidence that the ocean would be its ally. Her crew was young but disciplined. Under experienced commanders, she embarked on patrols across the Atlantic, attacking Allied ships and vanishing beneath the surface. Submarine warfare demanded not only technology, but also extraordinary endurance. Weeks of silence, darkness, and tension tested the limits of human will. The submarine could be a home or a tomb. By 1943, the tides of war began to shift. The Allies improved radio interception, developed advanced anti-submarine tactics, and gained access to German communications through cryptanalysis. The U-boats were losing their invisibility. Radar-equipped patrol aircraft scoured the skies, while hunter-killer groups on the surface tracked submarines for hours, even days. German commanders realized that the hunters were becoming the hunted. U-505, then under the command of Kapitänleutnant Peter Jeck, continued its missions, but each patrol grew more difficult. Operating from French bases, the boat hunted convoys near Gibraltar and the Caribbean. Sometimes it succeeded, more often it fled, diving deep, where the pressure rose and every metallic creak sounded like a death sentence. The machinery aged, morale weakened, and headquarters received more and more reports of missing boats. The Allies understood that the fight beneath the ocean's surface was not only about destruction, it was about intelligence. The key to breaking German command lay in the cipher machine known as Enigma. Despite breakthroughs by British cryptographers, each new version of Enigma presented fresh challenges. Capturing one of these machines, along with its codebooks, could change the entire course of the naval war. From this understanding came a daring idea, not merely to destroy a U-boat, but to capture one intact. Such an operation seemed almost impossible. Never before had the U.S. Navy seized an enemy submarine at sea. The risks were immense. Self-destruct charges, armed resistance, depth charges, the instability of a sinking vessel. But by 1944, desperation made the Allies bold. Each day of war cost hundreds of lives and thousands of tons of precious cargo. At this time, U-505 was in crisis. After several failed patrols, her crew was demoralized. The submarine limped back to base repeatedly with mechanical problems and psychological fatigue. In March 1944, a new commander, Kapitänleutnant Harold Lang, took charge to restore order and discipline. But morale was low, and belief in victory was fading. Lang's task was clear: prove that U-505 could still serve the Reich. That spring, the submarine put to sea again. Her patrol route led along the West African coast, where German intelligence believed lightly protected Allied convoys were passing. But the Allies were already watching those waters closely. In the same region, operated a special U.S. Navy hunter-killer group, Task Group 22.3, commanded by Captain Daniel V. Gallery. His force centered around the escort carrier USS Guadalcanal and 5 destroyer escorts, Chatelain, Pillsbury, Pope, Flaherty, and Jenks. Their mission was to find, track, and destroy German submarines in the Central Atlantic. By May 1944, Gallery's group was experienced and disciplined. Their radar, sonar, and aircraft formed a tight web of surveillance. Every crew member knew the procedure. But Captain Gallery carried a more ambitious goal. If the opportunity ever arose, he wanted to capture an enemy submarine rather than sink it. It was an idea bordering on madness. Yet Gallery believed the potential intelligence gain justified any risk. No one aboard those ships could imagine that within weeks, fate would bring them face to face with U-505 inches, the bright waters off West Africa, beneath the same sun that glimmered over an ocean hiding a silent, deadly war. Thus began a story that would stun the world: the capture of U-505, the first time since the 19th century that an American naval force would seize an enemy warship on the high seas. A story where courage, calculation, and chance intertwined, changing the course of naval warfare and opening a new chapter in the history of military intelligence. By early June 1944, the waters off West Africa appeared calm. Yet beneath that calm surface lay a battlefield invisible to the eye. For months, the U.S. Navy's Task Group 22.3 had been patrolling the Atlantic, sweeping thousands of square miles in search of German submarines. Commanded by Captain Daniel V. Gallery, the group operated as a coordinated machine, where every sonar operator, radar technician, and pilot worked as a part of one living organism. Their home base was the escort carrier, USS Guadalcanal, from which small aircraft continuously launched into the air to scout the horizon. Around it sailed 5 destroyer escorts: Chatelain, Pope, Pillsbury, Flaherty, and Jenks, each armed with depth charges, sonar, and trained crews. The American Navy had by this point developed a new doctrine for anti-submarine warfare: constant coordination between air and sea. Aircraft served as the eyes of the fleet, while destroyers provided the striking force. In the spring of 1944, this doctrine reached a high point of efficiency. The ocean, once the safe domain of U-boats, had become a hostile environment. And yet, somewhere beneath the surface, U-505 continued her patrol, unaware that her days were numbered. Captain Gallery was not a man easily satisfied with routine. A veteran aviator and strategist, he believed that information could be more powerful than torpedoes. His idea of capturing a German submarine rather than sinking it seemed reckless to many, yet it was supported by logic. The Allies had made great progress in decrypting Enigma messages, but every new variant of the machine and every change of codebooks caused delays that could cost lives at sea. To obtain an intact Enigma, along with the daily code settings, would be a priceless advantage. Gallery's superiors had not officially approved such a capture mission, but he quietly trained his men for that possibility. He instructed his crews to study procedures for boarding, securing, and towing a disabled submarine. No one yet knew that this preparation would soon be tested under fire. Meanwhile, U-505, under Captain Lieutenant Harold Lang, had left her French base in early May 1944. The morale on board was fragile. The crew had endured previous mechanical failures, including recurring problems with the diving planes and diesel engines. Despite repairs, the men were uneasy. The constant Allied air patrols forced them to remain submerged longer than was safe, draining their batteries and exhausting their air supply. Lang was determined to restore confidence, yet he felt the pressure of command as each day passed without success. His orders were to operate near the coast of West Africa and attack Allied shipping in the area. On the 4th of June, 1944, at approximately 11 a.m., an aircraft from the Guadalcanal's flight deck spotted a dark shadow below the water's surface about 150 miles southwest of the coast of Spanish Sahara. The pilot descended, confirming through binoculars that it was a submarine running just below periscope depth. The signal reached the carrier instantly, and within minutes, the destroyer USS Chatelain turned toward the contact at full speed. The calm ocean exploded with activity. Sirens echoed across the task group as each vessel moved into its designated position. The Chatelain's sonar operators locked onto the target. A pattern of depth charges was prepared. Within minutes, the first salvo detonated towering columns of water rose and fell, the shock waves echoing across the hulls. Deep below, U-505 trembled violently. Inside, lights flickered and equipment shattered. One of the explosion shock waves jammed the rudder and disabled the diving controls. The submarine began to lose buoyancy. Panic spread among the crew. Captain Lang, believing his boat fatally damaged, ordered the crew to abandon ship and set the scuttling charges. On the surface, sonar detected the submarine's sudden ascent. Through the periscope lens, the destroyer's crew saw the unmistakable outline of a U-boat breaking the surface at a steep angle. Water streamed off the hull as the sub rose uncontrollably. The Chatelaine opened fire with machine guns to suppress any possible counterattack, while the aircraft above dropped smoke markers to indicate position. Captain Gallery, aboard the Guadalcanal, received the report. At that moment, he made the decision that would define his career. He ordered, "Prepare to board the submarine." It was a command few had ever heard in modern naval warfare. The destroyer Pillsbury approached cautiously as small boats were launched toward the damaged U-boat. The boarding party, led by Lieutenant Albert David, raced toward the still-floating submarine, expecting explosions or resistance at any moment. Below deck, however, the scuttling charges had failed. The sea was rushing in, but the boat remained afloat, partially flooded yet intact. The German crew, following orders, had already jumped into the water, leaving their vessel behind. The Americans climbed aboard the slippery steel hull. The smell of diesel and smoke filled the air. The first men to enter found the control room deserted, red emergency lights flickering. They located and disarmed the demolition charges, secured the hatches, and began searching for valuable material. What they found would soon prove to be one of the greatest intelligence prizes of the war, an Enigma machine, complete with rotors and cipher keys, along with vital codebooks and charts. The boarding team began passing documents and instruments out through the hatch to the waiting boats. Every item was soaked, but still legible. Meanwhile, damage control teams worked to keep the submarine afloat. Pumps were brought aboard, and lines were attached to begin towing. As the sun set over the Atlantic, the American task group had accomplished something unprecedented. They had captured an enemy submarine on the high seas. U-505, scarred and half-flooded, was now under the control of the U.S. Navy. But the operation was far from over. The greatest challenge to tow the disabled vessel across the Atlantic without it sinking or being detected still lay ahead. In that moment, Captain Gallery's vision had become reality. His gamble had paid off, but no one yet understood the full magnitude of what they had seized. Inside that damaged hull lay secrets capable of altering the entire course of the naval war. The sudden capture of U-505 sent shockwaves through the task group. The immediate thrill of success gave way to the urgent need for control. The submarine, still half-flooded, was unstable. Every wave threatened to roll her over. The American sailors worked with relentless precision to secure tow lines, pump out seawater, and stabilize the vessel. The boarding team remained inside, checking for hidden explosives. Every sound of shifting metal brought fear that the boat might sink before the mission was complete. On the USS Guadalcanal, Captain Daniel Gallery watched as his destroyer escorts surrounded the captured submarine. His excitement was tempered by the realization that they had entered uncharted territory, literally and legally. Never before had a modern U.S. naval force captured a functioning enemy submarine at sea. The risk of enemy detection was high, and secrecy became the top priority. If Germany learned that a U-boat had been taken intact, they would immediately change all Enigma codes and communication procedures, erasing the Allies' new advantage. As night fell on the 4th of June 1944, the task group began the dangerous operation of towing U-505 westward, away from enemy patrol zones. The destroyer Pillsbury took the primary towing duty, but the strain on the lines was immense. The submarine, with its waterlogged hull and damaged rudder, fought every wave. Teams on deck worked through the night, adjusting pumps, repairing leaks, and monitoring for flooding. The Americans knew that if the U-boat sank, it would drag them down with it. Inside the captured vessel, Lieutenant Albert David and his men documented every item. They photographed control panels, gauges, and the radio room. There, among scattered manuals and wet papers, they found the ultimate prize, an intact Enigma machine with rotors still set for current operations. Nearby were cipher logs, signal books, and navigation charts. These items, carefully sealed in waterproof containers, were transferred to the Guadalcanal under armed guard. The men understood the value of what they had found, but not yet the scale of its impact. The next challenge was human. Dozens of German survivors floated in the water, clinging to debris. American sailors rescued them, treating their wounds and giving food and water. The captured men were exhausted and silent. They believed their submarine had been destroyed, unaware that it was now being towed toward Allied-controlled territory. To preserve the secret, Captain Gallery ordered that no radio messages mention the capture. All communications referred to a damaged enemy vessel and used coded terms. The prisoners were kept isolated, guarded, and denied any view of the horizon. For the next several days, the convoy moved carefully northwest, far from shipping lanes. Weather worsened. Waves crashed against the U-boat's hull, tearing at the cables. Several times, the submarine nearly broke free. Engineers aboard the Pillsbury reinforced the tow using steel chains and additional pumps. Men worked knee-deep in seawater, their hands raw from salt and rope. Yet, despite exhaustion and storm, the boat remained afloat. By the 19th of June, 1944, the task group reached the harbor of Bermuda, where secrecy was absolute. Guards surrounded the dock, and screens were erected to hide the submarine from view. The captured vessel was inspected, documented, and drained. Intelligence officers from the U.S. Navy and the British Admiralty arrived within hours. What they discovered confirmed the magnitude of the operation. The Enigma machine and codebooks provided current cipher information, helping Allied cryptographers to read U-boat communications faster and more accurately. This allowed convoys to avoid ambushes and helped the Allies maintain control of the Atlantic supply lines in the critical months following D-Day. To preserve the advantage, the entire operation was classified at the highest level. The German High Command never learned that U-505 had been captured intact. Instead, they listed the submarine as missing in action. Its crew members were detained secretly in the United States for the rest of the war, separated from other prisoners to prevent any word from spreading. For Captain Gallery and his men, the achievement was both technical and symbolic. They had not only captured a deadly weapon of war, but also broken into the enemy's mind. The operation demonstrated the power of coordination, courage, and foresight. The U.S. Navy had proven that skill and preparation could defeat even the most secretive weapon of the German fleet. When the story was finally revealed after the war, historians would call the capture of U-505 one of the most remarkable naval feats in history. But in those tense weeks of 1,944, it was a secret victory, silent, invisible, and vital to the survival of thousands at sea. When U-505 was finally secured in Bermuda, the enormity of the achievement began to settle in. What had started as a patrol mission had ended in one of the most daring captures in naval history. The submarine, once a weapon of the German Atlantic campaign, now lay silent under American control. Engineers and intelligence officers swarmed over the vessel, recording every instrument, wiring diagram, and weapon system. Every valve and circuit revealed details of German design and tactics. For the U.S. Navy, this was not only a military victory, but a technological windfall. The intelligence materials recovered, particularly the Enigma machine, and current codebooks, reached Allied cryptographic centers within days. Analysts at Bletchley Park in Britain and the U.S. Navy's code-breaking unit in Washington realized the immense value of the find. The data allowed them to confirm cipher patterns, understand operational signals, and preempt future U-boat movements. During the months following the Normandy landings, Allied convoys moved with unprecedented safety through the Atlantic. Many ships that might have been lost survived because of the codes taken from U-505. To maintain this advantage, secrecy was absolute. The captured submarine was hidden in Bermuda for the remainder of the war. Only a few senior officers and intelligence officials knew the full story. The German Navy, unaware of the capture, made no change to its encryption systems. The official German record listed U-505 as missing, presumed lost. Her crew remained isolated at a secure camp in the United States, forbidden to contact other prisoners or families. Their existence became another classified secret. For the men of Task Group 22.3, the experience left a lasting mark. They had trained for combat, not for history. Many realized the scale of their success only after the war. In 1945, Lieutenant Albert David received the Medal of Honor for leading the boarding party, one of the few such awards given for a naval action during the conflict. Captain Daniel Gallery was later recognized for his leadership and vision. He had dared to pursue an idea that others considered impossible and had changed naval strategy forever. After the war, U-505 was towed to the United States as a war trophy and studied extensively by naval engineers. Years later, instead of being scrapped, the submarine was preserved as a museum exhibit at the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago. There she remains today, displayed in a quiet hall, her hull still bearing scars of battle, but her story preserved as a reminder of courage and innovation. Visitors can walk through her narrow corridors and imagine the tension that once filled the air when she dived beneath the Atlantic. The legacy of the capture went far beyond the technical victory. It represented the turning point in the long, desperate struggle for control of the Atlantic. The operation proved that precise coordination, intelligence, and determination could overcome even the most secretive and dangerous threat. It was a triumph of human ingenuity in a war defined by machines. In the years that followed, the story of U-505 became a symbol of silent triumph, an episode of courage carried out in secrecy, known to the world only when peace had already returned. It reminded historians and sailors alike that victory at sea was not only about firepower, but also about knowledge, preparation, and the will to act when the impossible seemed within reach. Thus, the capture of U-505 stood as one of the most extraordinary episodes of World War II, a rare moment when strategy, bravery, and chance aligned to shift the balance of power in the world's greatest oceanic war.